Welcome to the 700 Club. For today's top headlines, let's go over to the CBN News Desk.
Gordon, with a new Gallup poll showing immigration is the top issue for Americans, and a federal court this week ruling against the Trump administration's plans to limit the number of people seeking asylum in the U.S. Jennifer Wishon sat down with White House immigration official Ken Cuccinelli, one of the most vocal advocates of the president's border policy.
Ken Cuccinelli is the newly appointed acting director of an immigration agency few had ever heard of until he took over. Citizenship and Immigration Services primarily processes applications to live, work, and seek asylum in the U.S., but Cuccinelli is elevating its profile.
I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with President Trump, because you have in many ways kind of become the face of his immigration policy.
God help him.
Tell me about that relationship.
The president was pretty emphatic. He wanted to see us educating people and telling them why what we're doing is the right path for America and for Americans, and to clear up, frankly, a lot of the misinformation that had been out there for a long time.
As the president moves to make immigration the centerpiece of his election strategy, Cuccinelli's stock is only expected to rise. The former Attorney General of Virginia, he's a staunch conservative who has long advocated the federal government get tough at the border, but not without compassion, as he recalls seeing this photo.
I have a grandson that age, and I have 7 kids of my own. Who isn't moved by that? But then it causes us to ask the question, why did this happen? And there are 2 basic answers to that. On a personal level, this father made a decision. He made a decision that in this country would be child neglect. And it cost both him and his daughter their lives. And that's something to be very sad about. At a higher level, we ask, well, what brought him to make that decision? And what brought him to make that decision is in large part these massive loopholes that stand out there as an attraction to people outside our country to try to come through.
His agency has a backlog of 300,000 asylum requests.
We are so swamped.
And the Department of Justice is wading through some 500,000 more.
We're trying to unbury ourselves systematically so we can let the good ones in. And by good ones, I just mean people who have traditional asylum claims, who have persecution for religious reasons or political reasons. And
Cuccinelli is also part of the team advising the president on the number of refugees the U.S. should take in the coming year. This as the global persecution of Christians and other religious minorities grows at an alarming rate, and refugee requests are likely to increase.
Some of the president's advisors are suggesting that in the next fiscal year, the U.S. accept no refugees or perhaps drastically lower number.
No one should mistake the debate about refugee numbers for a conclusion about where the Trump administration is on humanitarian care for those coming to our country or asking to come to our country.
Do you feel that God has placed you here for such a time as this?
Well, I think God has his plans for all of us. And, if you'd asked me a year ago, did I expect to be here, the answer surely would have been no. But God has his own plans. I'm proud to be here. I'm glad the president asked me to come help.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
While some parts of the United States are seeing a bit of a relief this week from record high temperatures, an historic heat wave is sweeping through much of Europe with temperatures, not heat indices, but actual temperatures ranging 105 degrees to nearly 109. Gary Lane has this story.
A suffocating heat wave rising up from the Sahara Desert is shattering record high temperatures across Europe. London recorded its hottest day on record for July. 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit at Heathrow Airport.
I'm not dealing with this heat. I'm from Scotland. I melt beyond 35 degrees, so this is pretty much where I start to pass out. I need to get in the water. To get into the water, cool down.
And that's exactly what many Londoners, tourists, and others did Thursday as temperatures in the UK went to just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. They took to beaches, ponds, and fountains to cool off. This community services worker in Kensington and Chelsea is visiting the elderly, reminding them to drink plenty of liquids.
Because remember, dehydration can send you back to hospital. That is, honestly, some people go to hospital just because they are very dehydrated.
In Paris, a new record high temperature, 108.7 degrees Fahrenheit. That shattered a previous record high set back in 1947. Air conditioning is rarely needed here. Few people have it in their homes and apartments. So many Parisians took a dive into some of the city's famous fountains just to cool off. This one near the Eiffel Tower.
I'm from Indonesia, so I know what like sun is and hot is, but this is just like too much.
Electric fans sold out in Paris, and on Thursday, 1/5 of France was under a red alert heat emergency. A similar heat wave in 2003 killed 15,000 people in the country. North of France in Belgium, the hottest heat wave on record, with high temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius. That's about 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Record highs were also recorded in the Netherlands at 105 and Germany at 108.7. Meanwhile, back in London at the zoo, even the usually playful meerkats appeared a bit hot and sluggish. Like their human counterparts, they tried to make the best of it. They cooled off by gnawing into some frozen refreshment, ice cubes, provided by their caregivers. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Big tech companies have been in the headlines this week with the federal government fining Facebook $5 billion for privacy violations, and the Justice Department talking about antitrust violations against major technology businesses. But at the same time, some of the most powerful players in the tech industry are using the best of their skills for the thing they're most passionate about, the gospel. As Caitlin Burke reports, much of Silicon Valley's most important new innovation is being funneled straight into the church.
Silicon Valley is home to some of the most brilliant minds in technology and innovation. Their skills are put to work at places like Apple, Google, and Facebook. A win for their companies, but a loss for the church. As a minister at Menlo Park Presbyterian, Kevin Kim watched Bay Area churches miss countless opportunities to learn from those filling their pews.
Within the 3,000 people that are sitting in our pews, there's so much human capital. There's so much potential. We have leaders in politics, leaders in government, leaders in medicine, leaders in technology, leaders in finance. But then when you try to take a look at, all right, how are we deploying these people? We're asking them to, lead a VBS or usher people to their seats.
That realization led him to learn more about people's gifts and how they could help bring innovation to the church.
The church needs to be more creative, needs to be more disruptive. I mean, God deserves the best of our imagination.
Out of that way of thinking came Code for the Kingdom, a modern-day idea session or hackathon. Kevin's friend Neil Alston, a Google business development manager, helped him get it started.
A hackathon is one of the most common events here, and the idea is you get together for a weekend and you solve a problem, and you solve it by hacking, which means not creating something that's awesome and permanent, but it answers a question.
Our first one, we brought in 250 of our friends who were designers and developers at these major tech companies. Friday night, you come in, you meet everybody, and then you pose these big innovation challenges in front of them. So you say, here's the orphan problem in the world, and here's global poverty, and here's anti-human trafficking, and here's evangelism. So we had all these kind of big innovation challenges, and then we cast it out to the 250 people. We said, what ideas, what platforms, what technology would you create to move the dial on this? The ideas and the product that they came up with, they were pretty amazing. In fact, so much so that this leader of a major Christian tech company who happened to be there, wanted to check it out, he said, what you guys did in a weekend, my guys couldn't do in 6 months.
Kevin, Neil, and their friends hosted these events for 5 more years. During that time, they came up with thousands of ideas, but noticed they were beginning to lose momentum because of a disconnect in getting those ideas to market.
It's really hard to sustain the kind of projects that are going to make a difference and an impact, and that's something that both Kevin and I have worked very hard at, is making sure that it continues to live on.
Neil did that by going out on his own and launching the faith-based tech company called Carpenter's Code.
I was never intending to leave Google when I was working on the hackathons. I thought I could mentor people and be an advisor and let them leave and go do it. And then I got called into doing it. So I think that was a course correction that I wasn't expecting.
Carpenter's Code developed a prayer app called Abide.
Abide gives you guided audio meditations, and they vary from 2 minutes to about 15 minutes. They're all focused back on Scripture. So we take a verse in the Bible and a topic around that, and then really just take you through a process of reflection.
Meanwhile, Kevin Kim took what he had learned and started his own company focused on missional tech work. It's called Basil Technologies.
The idea is that God would fill us as technologists, developers, and designers with his Holy Spirit to do his work. And so our focus was product development. So we didn't want to be all about ideas and like, hey, what about this, what about this? We were like, we will do fewer ideas, we will work more closely with these ministries and nonprofits, and then we will develop product.
Every Monday night, a group of Christian volunteers from some of the top tech companies in Silicon Valley come together to talk about some of the problems that Christian organizations are having. They then harness their combined innovation, creativity, and expertise to figure out not only the solution to the problem, but how to implement it.
One of Basil's current projects is a partnership with the International Justice Mission.
We had IGM come in and we did a brainstorm with them, which was led by one of our team members who's an expert in design thinking. And so in this brainstorm session, we discovered from International Justice Mission that these perpetrators of human trafficking were using technologies for their evil purposes. And so a lot of our people who work in tech, they were like, man, that can't happen. And so we want to do something about it.
The team hopes that by making major tech companies aware, they can come up with effective solutions together. At only about a year old, Basil has plans to eventually expand. For now, however, they plan to fine-tune their process and slowly spread the word by putting some of tech's best and brightest to work for the kingdom. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, San Francisco, California.